Many Territorians know very little about a small government corporation that owns huge swathes of the territory. Set up decades ago, critics called it a tool to thwart Aboriginal land rights, but it's still going strong today despite the risks from land claims diminishing. The government has little official power over it, yet has continued to allow the corporation to hold, manage and sell off land. But now, even the minister is asking questions. About an hour's drive out of Darwin, you hit Gun Point. Early morning and it looks lovely, even though spots are dotted with signs of neglect.
In some of the areas, particularly around the beach where there's lots of visitation, there's chronic erosion, there's rubbish, there's unfettered access to all of the beach.
This area may feel forgotten, but it's long been slated for bigger things. Both major political parties have variously proposed to plop future developments here. But who owns the land?
There's been quite a few archaeological surveys here.
You might not have heard of the Northern Territory Land Corporation, but it's a big landowner. The Northern Land Council has estimated the corporation and its twin, the Conservation Land Corporation, own more than 1/10 of the territory's land mass.
Well, if I was to ask anyone what's the NT Land Corporation, they wouldn't have a clue. And if you actually try and find it on the website, well, you won't. You might find a phone number in the phone book, and that's about it. So it's you might say, to some extent, a secretive body.
This is where the NT Land Corporation is now, nestled in Darwin's Parap in a building that otherwise only includes units or agencies of the Department of Lands, Planning and the Environment. It has no website, no annual reports, and its White Pages entry online has the wrong street address. You can only gain access by phoning the extension to be allowed upstairs.
It's an unusual setup. That they own so much land and yet they don't appear to have any money because, as they say, I think any money they get from the sale of land goes back to the government.
The NT Land Corporation's board is made up of career bureaucrats who've worked with territory governments of both stripes over the years. John Coleman sits on it, while also heading the Department of Lands, Planning and the Environment. His department administers the 6 or so brief pages of legislation that govern the NT Land Corporation. Yet the government, the department and the board insist the corporation is a separate entity, and it seems a poorly kept secret as to why.
One of the political aims of setting up the corporation was to grant it land so that it was no longer unalienated Crown land, because unalienated Crown land was claimable under the Territory Land Rights Act.
I solemnly hand to you these deeds.
After the momentum for Indigenous land rights hit full throttle in the 70s, the then CLP government created 2 apparently private entities to hold key Crown land. The Conservation Land Corporation today holds 117 land parcels, which make up the territory's parks and reserves, according to land title records. The NT Land Corporation holds 128 parcels of land deemed to be potentially important for development, and they range from vast stations to tinier lots dotted all over the territory. But there are no government maps publicly available for either. The local Larrakia people assert Gun Point is their land, but they didn't lay a land rights claim on it.
Partly it's because of the cattle station that took up a lot of the tenure, but also because of the Northern Territory Land Corporation, where Crown land was basically handed to them by the Crown.
The latest version of proposed future development for this land by the Planning Commission involves a port precinct and a nearby suburb. The early stage drawings indicate the developments would sit mostly on the Crown lease land held by the NT Land Corporation. Donna Jackson says it's unlikely there'd be any future Larrakia land claims, even if the area changed hands, because the 1997 Sunset Clause in the Land Rights Act prevents any further claims.
So it was a pretty sneaky and clever, I guess, manoeuvre of the government to get up all this land and make it unclaimable, and then the sunset date passed and now you can't claim it any which way.
Despite past media reports quoting politicians denying this was the aim, today's Lands Minister says otherwise.
My understanding of NT Land Corp was it was set up many, many years ago to deal with the ALRA, the Aboriginal Land Rights Act. And unlike any other state or territory in Australia who do not or did not have Aboriginal land rights at the time, they needed to have an entity here in the Northern Territory to basically, or be set up to provide some strategic land assets for government of the day.
Spirit Hills, which is a pastoral lease held by the Land Corporation, where there's coexisting native title.
Despite the fact the threat of land rights claims has dissipated, the NT Land Corporation is still going strong. The Government Gazette last month revealed 3 parcels of land in Katherine were transferred from government to the Land Corporation. But the interest is not so much in how it receives government land, more in what checks and balances there are for the public assets and money it has.
One of the questions that has arisen historically about the corporation is in terms of its accountability and its public accountability. Clearly, if the government is giving it money to purchase land that has some function in the development of the economy, normally there would be fairly stringent public accountability measures in terms of how much money is going there, making sure it's regularly audited, and so that all of those things are subject to public disclosure and therefore questioning, of course. Unfortunately, the way this legislation is established, that there's no requirements for auditing. It doesn't appear to be subject to the Auditor General's jurisdiction.
I'm not saying that Landcorp has done anything bad. I'm not saying the government's done anything bad, but we have this situation which I think is well past its time.
The NT Land Corporation refused to provide a list of what it owns, financial statements, or an interview. The legislation that governs it makes clear the government has very little power over it. In fact, the corporation says it only gives the Lands Minister audited statements as a matter of courtesy.
The corporation operates the same as private enterprise and is subject to all of the same requirements as the private sector in dealing with its land holdings. The corporation manages the land holdings, enters sublease and licensing arrangements, and from time to time sells some land. The net proceeds of land sales are paid to the NT government.
Labor didn't dismantle the corporation during its reign, but the Territory Lands Minister says he's now questioning whether the NT Land Corporation should continue and is seeking legal advice on the matter. He's confident nothing untoward is happening, but says he has many questions about how it operates.
We live in a world today where the general public expect a level of accountability, and they have it with government, they have it with government processes.
Do you think that accountability exists with the way NT Land Corp is set up and runs at the moment?
Well, I wouldn't be asking questions if I didn't have a level of concern. I wouldn't be asking questions if I didn't think that, the government, Territorians, deserved answers. But what I won't question is why it was set up in the first place. I absolutely get that. It's more about whether or not the way it operates today fits in a modern government world, a modern administration, and whether it is as relevant today as what it once was.